please. Thank you. So I really wanted to just take a few moments at the start of today's session to set the scene, provide some context before I hand over to our partners this morning in the Citizens' Rights Project, who we are delighted to have join us this morning. And I want to use PAL at the end of my comments. So first of all, I really just want to give you some background information of where we are at the moment in terms of the constitution of the construction industry's workforce in Scotland and how some of the changes this morning might impact upon that. So at the moment, 8% of the construction workforce in Scotland was born outside of the UK. That figure is lower than the rest of the UK. The figure is 10.2%, but that is already beginning to drop. There's a trend already underway. In 2018, the figure was 10.7% across the UK. 0.5% may not sound like a lot, but I think there are approximately 3.5 million workers in the UK construction industry. 0.5% can make a huge difference. Those non-UK born workers are not spread out evenly across the country. Indeed, they are concentrated in the southeast of England, around the London area, where nearly half of the non-UK workforce is based, 49.6%. That in itself provides us with some concern going forward as a consequence of Brexit, perhaps a secondary consequence. If London is no longer able to tap into an EU workforce at quite the same level it has been able to do so in recent years under freedom of movement, then will London start to draw in workers from across the rest of the UK, from across Scotland to go down and work in London. I believe that's what happened in the late 70s and 80s. London was a real draw to workers, offering higher rates of pay, and we are a little bit concerned that that could become a secondary impact of Brexit. It's just something we need to keep an eye on. There hasn't been enough time just yet to sort of view that trend over a longer period, but it does look like that is the direction of travel. Of that 10.2% of non-UK based workers in the construction industry across the UK, 8.2% of those, so nearly 4/5 of the non-UK born workforce in the construction industry across the UK are from the EU countries. Again, there's a slight trend there, going down from 8.6% in 2018. And that is before many of the changes that we are going to discuss today really start to kick in. Most of those will bite in January 2021. So these trends are prior to much of what we're going to talk about today. However, 23% of the construction firms in Scotland employ a non-UK worker. So non-UK workers in the Scottish construction industry, they're not the majority, but they are a really significant and critical part of our workforce, 8% of our workforce, and we really need to do all we can to retain them. Going forward, indeed at this moment in time, we now have the points-based immigration system, and I've left a link to that at the bottom of this slide so that you can read it in more detail. That could be a presentation in and of its own, so I won't touch on it in too much detail, other than to make a couple of points, one of which is of the EU workers that are in the UK at the moment in the construction industry, nearly half of those are self-employed. There is no provision in the points-based immigration system for self-employment. So you cannot come to the UK to be a self-employed brickie or a self-employed joiner, etc. You have to have employment. The other slight concern we have with the points-based immigration system is your employment has to come at a certain level of earning, and some of those earnings for some of the positions in construction may be too high, although there are some exceptions for priority trades and occupations within the construction industry. But there's certainly a concern there that there's not going to be the same level of access going forward to EU workers as there has been in the past. I should note as well, some of the figures that I'm quoting this morning are from a CITB migration report published earlier this year. And again, there's a wee link to that at the bottom of this slide, should you want to read it in more detail. Next slide, please, Juan. So some labour market intelligence for the Scottish construction industry. Scottish construction is expected to grow by 4.1% over the next 4 years, recovering to pre-pandemic levels by 2023. So that's great news, very positive. There's growth coming down the track, and we will recover to pre-pandemic levels, as I said, by 2023. In order to fulfil that growth in the construction industry, we will need to increase the construction workforce north of the border by 1.4% each year, which compares to 1% smaller rate across the rest of the UK. But Scotland will need annual increases of 1.4% in our construction workforce up until 2025. What that means is we have a recruitment rate of 2.3%. That's in comparison to the baseline of construction workers. And more straightforwardly, all of that means we have to recruit over 26,000 new workers between now and 2025 just to meet the level of growth that is expected in the construction industry. 26,250 workers is a lot. It's a daunting number, and we need to do all that we can to ensure that we do not lose out on any of that potential growth because we don't have the skills and the workforce available to fulfill it. Again, these statistics are from the CITB Construction Skills Network Scotland report, which was published earlier this month, and there's a link at the bottom of the slide should you wish to read that in more detail. Next slide, please, Juan. So I think a brief summary of the position that I wanted to set out at the beginning of this morning's presentation is the positive news is there's growth predicted across the Scottish construction sector over the coming years. However, that is going to be challenged by the detrimental impacts of COVID-19. Of course, COVID has to be in there, and of course, what we're here today to talk about, the impacts of Brexit, and they are going to present some real skills challenges for the sector for the coming years. Some of our members are reporting challenges already. They are already beginning to bite, but I think that has the potential to get worse rather than better over the coming years. One little point I would say there is, I don't mean to be too pessimistic because I really do want to highlight that Scotland, particularly in comparison to the rest of the UK, has a fantastic record of developing our own domestic workforce. If you look at apprenticeship statistics, Scotland punches well above our weight in relation to apprenticeship recruitment in comparison to the rest of the UK. So we do have some really positive indicators and a commitment to training and development across the construction industry in Scotland, which will hopefully help us meet the challenges that are ahead. Notwithstanding that, I think everybody would agree that there is a real need to retain as much talent as possible to ensure that skilled workers from the EU countries remain in Scotland. So we do not want to lose any of our existing EU workforce. We hope they want to stay and remain and live and work in Scotland, and we want to do all that we can to help support that so that they can help us with their skills and with their talents to meet the needs of the industry. The Scottish Government has provided some resources to help employers encourage workers to stay in Scotland beyond the deadline at the end of this month. And again, I've provided a link at the bottom of the slide to the package of support. So there are leaflets, there are posters, there's information packs available in there. I do wonder if we're approaching the deadline now and perhaps moving beyond that stage. The deadline to apply to the EU settlement scheme being the 30th of June. But there are sources of support there available for you if you want to display posters or whatever you want to do around the workplace. I would now like to hand over to Pal. Pal Kopek is from the Citizens' Rights Project. Pal is the Outreach and Information Officer with the Citizens' Rights Project, who have received some funding from the Scottish Government to help support EU citizens to apply to the settlement scheme and remain in the UK. What I want to say just before handing over to Pal is we are extremely grateful for his time. As I'm sure you can imagine, as we approach the deadline, Pal and the Citizens' Rights Project are being inundated with applications. So we really are grateful for Pal taking some time out to be with us this morning. And I'm interested to hear his thoughts on the EU settlement scheme before returning to facilitate some question and answers at the end of today. Over to you, Pal.
Thank you very much, Paul. And yeah, thank you very much for inviting me to this meeting. Quite delighted to be here and talk a little bit about the Brexit and what's going to happen with the EU citizens in a post-Brexit time. So first, maybe I'd like to start with sort of briefly setting up the situation that we are now in. So if I can ask for the next slide, please. So all I can say now is the end is near. Obviously, within the last couple of years, within sort of Brexit timeline, there's been a couple of ends, and after each end, there's been a new beginning, so to say. So if you might remember from the post sort of pre-pandemic time, the actual Brexit happened on the 31st of January 2020. Seems like ages ago now. So that was the actual date when the UK formally left the EU. But because the EU and the UK signed the agreement, so it was so-called a deal Brexit, as we remember all the talks before that. Yep. So because of that deal, there's been implemented so-called the transition periods that lasted until the end of the 2020. So within that, the transition periods, nothing pretty much changed within sort of situation of the EU citizens. So the UK, so the EU law still applied to the UK, and the EU citizens could still freely come and go from the UK. So that free movement still existed at that time. So the new EU citizens could come to the UK, could settle in or start the road to settlement, and they can just come and freely, take an appointment or start studying. So no changes with that. After the 31st of December, when the transition period ended, the whole situation of the EU citizens changed at that time. So people who arrived to the UK before the residence deadline, so that deadline of the 31st of December, could apply to for pre-settle or settled status, and they can still enjoy the rights that they had, before the Brexit. But the people who arrived after the residence deadline, who hasn't been here before the 31st of December, they would have to apply under the new immigration rules. So that's what Paul mentioned about the new point-based immigration system. So that was a new reality for the people who arrived post the residence deadline. But just to give EU citizens some time to apply, what it seems that still not enough by the amount of people we need to help now, but people who arrived before the 31st of December had time to apply for the status until the 30th of June. So there's still about a week to the end of the application deadline. And after that time, after the 30th of June, all people, all EU citizens and the family members who live in the UK would need to have either settle or pre-settle status or some kind of visa, either student visa or workers visa, or at least they'll have to apply for the status. So they're still, if they applied before the deadline, but probably all those people who apply now will have to wait for a decision. But you know, as long as they applied within the deadline, then that's fine. So that's all the situation at the moment. So during the transition period, we had just one type of EU citizens. Whoever came to the UK could benefit from the same rights, could settle here, start work or study, you know, go to self-employment and so on. But after the end of transition periods, and definitely after the end of grace periods, we'll have several types of different EU citizens, depending when and how they entered the UK. So you can ask for the next slides. Yeah, so we've got 4 different types of EU citizens, and I'll try to just briefly talk about them in this presentation. So we've got people who arrived in the UK before the 31st of December and applied for settle or pre-settle status. That's important. They need to have that status after the 30th of June. Also, we've got close family members of people with settle or pre-settle status. So that family members that they might be still in the home countries who haven't been in the UK before 31st of December, but they can still come here as adjoining family members. And I'll talk about this later on. We've got visitors, so people who came to the UK after the 31st of December, but they don't want to work or study. They just come here to visit for 2 weeks, a month, for 2 months, and so on. And we've got the last category of people who arrive here after the end of residence deadline, but they seek employment or they want to study in the UK. So the next slide, please. So the first type of people are those who can apply and who must actually apply to the EU settlement scheme. So we've got all EU, EEA or Swiss citizens who lived here before the 31st of December 2020. And I've pointed out some groups of people who are particularly in danger of being missed out because there are some preconceptions that, you know, all those people don't need to apply. So we can see that elderly people who lived here for a very long time, they think that they don't have to apply because they've been living here for a long time. Many people forget about the children. Unfortunately, it's a bit embarrassing when you talk about this, but yeah, so many people think that, okay, like I need to apply for a settled status because I'm an adult, but you know, like children, especially young children, you know, they are not adults, so they probably don't need to apply for any status. But actually, you know, unless the children have British citizenship, they have to apply as well. It's a bit quicker way. You can link that application, the child application, to the parent application, which is makes the whole process much easier. But nevertheless, they need to start their own applications. And even children born in the UK, that's very often kind of mistake that people make. There are certain requirements for children born in the UK then to be able to get like automatically being British. So it doesn't mean that, you know, if the child was born in the UK, it's automatically British. There needs to be some requirements met. Also, there's a permanent resident card, which were issued in the past. It's kind of like blue card to blue book. that some people might have applied before, but that was issued under the EU law, which obviously ceased to apply to the UK post the transition period. So those documents will not be valid, will not prove the right to reside in the UK. And also, we normally talking about EU citizens as a sort of like, in short, but also the non-EEA or non-EU people also can apply to the EU settlement scheme if they are family members of the EU national. So if I'm Polish and then I've got settled status, and then let's say if I have a wife from Ukraine or from America or from Australia, so my wife would also be able to apply to the scheme because she's a family member of the EU citizen. Obviously, as long as she lived in the UK before 31st of December. There are two types of people who don't have to apply, however, they can if they want to. So Irish citizens, because Ireland's got much older agreement about the free movement with the UK, predated even the European Union, and the people with indefinite leave to remain. So that's also a sort of immigration status that some people might have obtained before in the past. So that would be probably the case of some elderly people who's been here maybe before the UK even joined the EU. And also we've got British citizens and the people with dual citizenship when one of them is British, so like British Polish, British French, or British German, and so on. So as long as one of the citizenships are British, so they are perceived by the UK as British citizens. And obviously being British means that you don't need to have any immigration status in the UK because, well, you're not immigrants, just short to speak. Can I ask for the next slides, please? Yes, so I've mentioned also the joining family members. So the close family members, and you can see the description here at the bottom of the slide, who the close family members are, according to the Home Office. Those people would be able to come and join their family members in the UK, even if they haven't been in the UK before 31st of December. And they will also be able to apply to the EU settlement scheme. So for example, I'm a Polish citizen, I've got a settled status, and if I want to bring my parents, maybe in 2, maybe in 5, maybe in 10 years time, because I'd like to take care of them, and then I just want to bring them here just to be able to take care of them better. I'll be able to bring them here, ask the joining family members, and they'll be also able to apply for pre-settled status at the beginning, and then after 5 years for settled status, and they will have the same rights that that I have being here from before the 31st of December. There are 2 conditions that must be met. So the relationship must have existed at the end of transition period, so at the 31st of December 2020. So let's say if I'm going to meet someone, fall in love, and then marry that person in 2 years' time, and I would like to bring that person to the UK as my wife, I wouldn't be able to do so because at the 31st of December 2020, we haven't been married, so we haven't been even in a relationship. And obviously the relationship must be still continuing. So it's not that, I've been with someone at the 31st of December, and then let's say we're not in a relationship anymore, and then I want to bring that person to the UK. So that 2 conditions that have to be met. So the particular danger, and we've met a couple of cases like that. We've got people who, because of a pandemic, couldn't get married on time as they planned, let's say in 2020. So they married in early 2021, so in March or April or May this year, and they want to bring the spouse to the UK, which obviously they haven't been married at the 31st of December. So that sort of condition doesn't apply. However, as you can see, there is a category of a durable unmarried partner. So as long as they can prove that at the 31st of December 2020, they've been in durable relationship, even though they haven't been married yet, but they've been together So I think the requirements is being together for at least 2 years, and sort of proving that, you know, they've been living together or just visiting each other frequently. You know, if they've got children together, that's, you know, kind of reinforced argument, and so on and so on. That's much more complex case. And then if someone is applying based on durable unmarried relationship, I would advise contacting the organization like ourselves, and we'll be able to help in the application. And can I ask for the next slides? So how the joining family members can actually apply and enjoin their family members. So if they are EU citizens, and if they have biometric documents like biometric passport, they can apply straight away for pre-settled status from outside the UK. So they can do the normal application for pre-settled status from the home country. However, in the application, they'll specify that they don't apply based on their own residence in the UK, but based on being a family member of someone who's got a status, and that they have to prove the relationship, obviously, and just attach the sort of proof that that person that we want to join already has got pre-settled or settled status, and also in the terms of sort of parents or children over 21, they'll need to prove the dependency on that sponsor. So, for example, you know, financial dependency, or I need to prove that, you know, I need to take care of my parents. That's why I'm bringing them over here. If they don't have biometric documents, or they are non-EU family members who don't have any sort of UK residence document like resident card, permanent resident cards, or so on. So those people will have to first apply for EU settlement scheme family permit from the home country. And once they got that family permit, then they'll be able to come to the UK. And then they've got 3 months to apply for status from within the UK. So that family permit gives the sort of entry clearance for that people then to be able to apply for pre-settled status. So it is not possible. So in most of the cases, if not all of them, in the UK immigration law, you always, if you're applying for any sort of visa or status, you know, coming to the UK, you need to do it from outside of the UK. So those people would not be able to just come here as a visitor, like, you know, using their passport as the EU citizens can, and then apply from within the UK. So either they apply for pre-settled status straight from the home country, and after they got a decision, they're coming to the UK, or they apply for family permits. They got family permits coming to the UK, and on the family permits, and then they apply from within the UK. And the next slide, please. So also we've got the third category of people who just want to visit the UK. So we've got EU citizens who just want to come here for a short period of time. So they can do so without applying for any visa up to 6 months. So they can just come here for 6 months, stay with the parent, stay with the family, or just, you know, visit sightseeing the country, and that's all fine. But they cannot start work, or they cannot access free healthcare during that time. So basically, they've got status of just a tourist. Obviously, there's no restrictions on how many of that sort of visits you can do every year, and there's no limit of how many months in a year you can stay. So in theory, I could come here for 6 months, and I can go back home to home country, and then enter the UK once again and stay for briefly. There's one sort of condition that the UK sort of border must be, you know, the workers in border must be satisfied that you don't try to stay in the UK permanently using that sort of visitor rules. So you cannot come and go, you know, like come for 6 months and then go back for a week and then go to the UK for 6 months. If they notice that, they'll give a ban for entry for that person. You can, for example, be here for 4 months and then come back for some time, and then come back here for 3 months, as long as the person can prove that they are very likely to come back to their home country. So they've got so their intention is to leave the UK within a certain period of time, less than 6 months. Then that's fine. So you probably heard all the stories when the people that's been caught and put in detention at the borders. So that was probably because you know, that the UK border wasn't satisfied. You know, that they had suspicions that those people actually enter here to enter employment, to start working in the UK as opposed to just visiting. So that's normally a main problem. So if any grandparents wants to visit their family, so it's better not to mention that they're coming here to take after their children, because that might be perceived as an unpaid work, and then that's already breaching the visitors rules. So those people who are visiting the UK, they can still use their national IDs to cross the border until the 30th of September. After that, they will have to carry the passports. Unlike before, you can use either passport or national ID cards, whatever you like. Unless, you know, that's people with settled or pre-settled status, so they will be able to cross the border using the ID until the end of 2025. And then the non-EU family members will have to have additional documents on top of their passport, such as family permits or kind of UK issued biometric residence card. And then we're going to the last category of the people. So can ask next slide, please. And that's the people who are entering here the UK after the 31st of December, and they want to get into the employment, or they want to study. So yeah, they'll have to either apply for the student visa or for the workers visa, and then again they must do it before entering the UK. So they cannot come to the UK and then start looking for employment, like for example I did about 7 years ago, unfortunately. So they need to have the job offer from the Home Office licensed sponsor. So that's quite a long list of employers already sign up to that sort of sponsor list. They'll need to have a job offer at the required skill level, and that we can find in a Home Office guidance. They need to prove that they speak English to the required level, so they need to pass some exam, or they've got some certificates that they speak English to the required level. And as Paul said, there's also kind of the salary threshold that needs to be met, and it's normally, I think, above £25,000 per year. And then depending, you know, if they've got a PhD, and especially PhD in the STEM sort of some kind of science discipline, then they might have that taken down that threshold, but nevertheless it's quite high. So I don't want to go into too much, but yes, it looks like it will be much more difficult to bring workers from abroad. They'll have to meet quite a lot of different criteria, which are sometimes very high, especially probably for the physical workers. Yeah, so that looks the situation. So if you can ask for the next slide, so I can maybe try to organize that different types of the citizens that we were talking about. So the first two types are people who's been here before the 31st of December, or their close family members that they brought to them to the UK. And you know, both of these people can apply for settled or pre-settled status, and then those two sort of group of people will be will benefit from the same rights, or nearly the same rights that they had back before the Brexit. And that's only those people who arrive here after the 31st of December, either as a visitors, so they don't need visa, hence the sort of category, as I said, non-visa nationals. So before, even before the Brexit, the non-EU citizens were divided into two groups, either visa nationals or non-visa nationals. So non-visa nationals, such as, I don't want to, but I think Americans, the people from the United States, could benefit from that. So they can come here without applying for a visa as a tourist, so staying up to 6 months. But if they want to start work or study, they had to apply for the visa. So the same thing now, so the same situation applies to the EU settlement, to EU citizens since the 1st of January. So they don't need visa if they arrive here as visitors, but then they don't have any rights. They're just visitors, or they have to apply for a visa, and then obviously they need to adhere to all the sort of restrictions that the visa sort of requires them to do so. So it's probably not indefinitely, so that the visa will be only for a certain period of time, and then they've got some limitations coming from the fact that they've got a visa. So we can go to the next slide, and then I want to talk also a little bit about the people with settled or pre-settled status, but then what to do next. So in just over a week, we'll have the end of the grace period, and many people will be required to prove their rights in the UK. So there is no physical document proving the status under the EU settlement scheme. It's all digital, unfortunately, because definitely some vulnerable people might have problems to proving that. But unfortunately, the UK government said that the digital status will stay here, and then I don't think that at least in the nearest future they're going to issue any physical documents. So people with settled or pre-settled status must log in to the digital profile that they can find on the website that they can see on the site, and they have to provide the identity document number, so the passport, national ID, and the documents that they used when they applied for the status, then the date of birth, and they have to confirm the access code that will come either to the email or to the phone. And as you can see, that's how more or less the digital profile looks like. So we'll have a photograph, your name, surname, and all the information about the status and the rights to the UK. And then below, you've got two sections, either to prove your status, where people will be able to prove the status to someone, or updated details, which is also very important. And then we'll soon start a big campaign on reminding people that whether they change the contact details like phone number, email address, the home address, but definitely the most importantly, the personal details, like, if they change the name or surname, or if they change the ID documents, they need to update it on the digital profile, which is very important. Like, as you can see, the identity document number is needed to log in to your profile. So it needs to be changed if you've got a new document. So if you want to prove the status, can I get the next slide, please? You just click in a section below to prove your status to someone. You choose there's the option, question to choose why do you want to prove your status, whether you want to prove your right to work or right to rent in the UK, or any other reason, for example, to claim benefits and so on. So let's say we want to prove the right to work. I choose the option prove your right to work, and then I got that page with my picture, name, surname, and the confirmation that you have a right to work. And then underneath, you can see a very bold statement that that this is not the proof of your right to work in the UK. So I cannot just show or just print that and then show to my employer. So I need to click continue, generate the share code, which will appear on the next slide, and sort of next slide, next page. So I didn't put that in the slide. And yeah, sorry, if you can go back. Yeah, I've messed up. Yeah, so that will be on the next page if you click on continue, and then this share code you can print. You can write it down on a piece of paper, or there's also option to email that directly to your employer, and then the employer will be able to go to the website, view right to work, and then provide that share code together with the date of birth of that person, and then by clicking continue, probably the employer will see exactly the same page that we can see now. So that's kind of preview of what your employer will see when it will be checking your right to work. And at that moment, this is the only way to prove that someone's got settled or pre-settled status. I know that many people ask, so I've heard that some employers ask to provide the PDF letter that the EU citizens received in the email from the Home Office with a decision that, you know, you've been granted settled or pre-settled status and so on. However, even in that sort of PDF letter, it also says with the bold letters, this is not the proof of the status. So in fact, as the Home Office says, this PDF letter that the people received from the Home Office, this is not a valid proof of someone's status. In fact, actually, in this letter, there are also kind of application number, and there are certain informations that are quite private. So we normally advise people not to share that PDF letter with anyone. So unfortunately, the only way to prove that someone's got status is by logging into the digital profile, generate the share codes, and then share that share codes with the employer. So if you can ask for the next slide, please. And I was talking about updating the details. So again, from the digital profile, they have to go to the section below. And if they want to upload the documents, which is a very crucial thing because the status is linked with the ID document number, that ID document can be changed just by providing all the sort of information from the document, sort of like, name, surname, the document number, expiry date, and so on and so on. And then people just need to upload either photograph or scan of that document. So if that's passport, it's just that main page with all the information and the photo. If that's the national ID card that the European citizen have, that needs to be scanned or photograph of both pages of that card. So it's similar like with the driving license, you've got information on both sides of page, and then they all needs to be uploaded. There might be one exception if we've noticed recently, if someone changed the identity document and changed the name at the same time. So for example, that probably applies more to women when they very often when they got married, they changed the name, obviously changed the documents to have the new name on it. And in that circumstances, the Home Office might ask that person to send this new ID document by post to the Home Office, and then they're going to verify that manually. But normally, in the most circumstances, they just need to upload the photo or scan, and that's fine. And obviously, the change doesn't happen automatically. Now you submit the request to change your details, and then that will be changed afterwards. Now it might take a couple of weeks. Hopefully, after all the backlog with the application will go down after a couple of weeks and months, that will be much quicker. But until the person gets the email confirmation that your identity document details has been updated in our system, then they need to still use the old document number to log in to the profile. Okay, can I ask for the next slide, and then we're coming to the end. Obviously, some people, as I said at the beginning, who applied now for the status, or they might apply for, some time ago, but the backlog is enormous, unfortunately. And then if the people had to provide some more documents proving the residence in the UK, then they might wait for quite some time to get a decision. But because they applied within the, before the deadline, within the time, they are covered by the withdrawal agreement. So what they will have to do is ask the Home Office to, normally the Home Office should send that quite soon after the application, but sometimes if they don't get it, they'll have to ask to be sent or resent certificate of application. And if it's less than 6 months old, the certificate of application, they can provide that to the employer, and the employer can check in the sort of employer's checking system with the Home Office whether that person still waits for a decision, so it's still valid, and then they will get, I forgot how it's named, but sort of like certificates of the sort of registration or kind of positive decision from the Home Office that yes, this person has got applied for the status and is still here legally, and that sort of certificate that the employer will get from the Home Office will be then valid for 6 months. So for 6 months, that person, employer would be like, okay, that's fine. At least for 6 months, this person is covered. So, as soon as they got a decision, so obviously they should come to the employer and then show them the proof of the status. But yeah, so that's very important to not discriminate people who applied, wait for a decision, and then they should be still covered by the withdrawal agreement to be able to stay lawfully in Scotland, well, in the UK, until the decision is resolved, or then further on, if they don't have, if they've been granted status. But yes, and the last slide, please. Yes, so we are dealing with enormous number of applications at the moment, and we are still very worried that some people might not be able to apply on time. And although we really push people to apply before the deadline, in certain circumstances, so that's all the reasonable grounds for late applications taken from the EUSS caseworker guidance. So that's the guidance for people in the Home Office who are dealing with applications. So as you can see, in some of the circumstances, if then the people prove that that sort of circumstances prevented them from applying to this status, their late applications should be also accepted. I think apart from children, when normally they'll be able to apply after the deadline without sort of much explanation, which is very welcome, because we can't punish children for something that the parents haven't done because they didn't know, or so on. So there are some circumstances when the people will be applying late. They probably, if you know anyone like that, I would advise directing them to the organization like ourselves, because that involves even a little bit higher qualification than even myself. So I'll have to escalate it to the immigration solicitor, because then we'll have to explain the Home Office and prove that this people has been vulnerable and therefore hasn't been able to apply in time. So that involves a little bit kind of explanation as well. But there is still hope for that vulnerable people if they missed the deadline, which is quite positive, I think, at the end of that presentation. And that's everything from me. Thank you very much. And then if you've got any questions, I'll have to answer them now.
Paul, thank you very much for the presentation this morning, for all the information you've given us. Really just want to open it up now. I appreciate we're at 5 to 11 there. We had planned to finish at 11 o'clock, but if anybody wants to take themselves off mute and ask Paul or I a question, we would be more than happy to hear from you. Is that a question from Susan, I see?
Yeah, Paul, I've got a couple of guys who work with me. They're Polish. They've been in this country 15, 20 years. They've got permanent residence status, but listen to what you're saying today, they still have to apply for settlement. Is that right?
Yes. If they have permanent resident cards, so it's normally sort of a blue card, like paper cards from so that permanent residence card was issued under EU law. So if they've been here for 5 continuous years, exercising the treaty rights, they could apply. Not many people applied, because being EU citizens, you can stay here anyway without that card.
These guys aren't getting this when I'm telling them. They're just not getting this at all, eh? So is there a number that you could forward to me that I can give them so they can speak to somebody especially maybe somebody Polish that can speak in their own language as well.
Yes, in a minute, I'm going to actually share my contact details.
Right.
So it might probably it's better if they either email to our main email address, because I'm monitoring this as well, and then my colleague as well.
Yeah.
And they can email us in Polish as
Yeah.
well. And also I'm going to provide my
Mhm.
at work number, although because we've got plenty of appointments now, so most of the day I'm with the clients helping them. That's why I might not be always able to answer the phone. Sometimes I'm
I'm really
picking up all the messages.
We're running out of time here. You know, we're really running out of time here. And these are guys that have been in this country for 15, 20 years, and they're not getting this. They just seem to think that that's it, they can stay here. Their children have been born here, and from what I'm listening to what you're saying, they still have to apply for settlement for their children as well. Would that be right?
Well, it depends when the children were born, but actually having that permanent residence card, that actually helps, because if the children were born in the UK after one of the parents had either settled status or permanent resident cards, or indefinite leave to remain, so any sort of settlement document, those children would be automatically British.
Right.
But sometimes, let's say we've got people who arrive here in the UK and then the child was born just maybe a year or 2 years after they arrived to the UK.
Yeah.
In that circumstances, most probably, I'm not a specialist in citizenship, but most likely the child would not be able to get automatically British citizenship.
Right.
Then after a certain amount of years, the child could be registered as British,
yeah.
which then involves kind of, I think, around £1,000 of all the fees, etc. But, you know, before they are registered as British, they're still EU citizens, so they have to apply as well.
Right.
But yeah, I'll press them.
Got British citizenship, which I'm not quite sure if one of them has. Is that the case then, that they don't need to apply for settlement?
No, if they've got dual citizenship and one of the citizenship is British, then they are treated as British in the UK, and then default, you know, they don't need to apply for that.
Right. Okay. Right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
No problem.
Are there any other questions for Pal before we close?
Yes. I have 2 questions. Basically, first question is, what happens if they don't apply for it? And second question is, obviously, how can you as an employer check the status of all people? I mean, if you are a Baumgartner or Coppet, then obviously a company will say, well, obviously the people are from the European Union. But if it's a Paul Mitchell, that sounds very Scottish, then you wouldn't ask Paul. But how, as a company, can you identify the employees you need to ask for? And do you have to ask them for that?
Yes, thank you very much, Thomas. I was actually very important thing I've missed talking about the employer checking system. So we can later share the links to all the information on the government websites, but on one of the government websites, when it sort of explains step by step how to check the employees' immigration status, there's a reminder that you know, after the 31st of December, some EU citizens need to so after the 30th of June, the new immigration rules for recruiting people from outside the UK will apply, and then it says you will not need to make retrospective checks for existing employees, which is worth remembering. So then the burden doesn't fall on the employer, because if you've got existing employee who's been working for you for some time, then you don't need to check them, because you know that they've been here. And then even if they didn't apply for the status, well, it's not your fault as an employer that you haven't checked them, because you know the government website says you don't need to do a retrospective check. So if that person will be then caught that, well, you've been living here for some time, but you haven't applied for the status, so then they can get consequences basically of being here unlawfully, and then, you know, working here unlawfully. But for the new coming employees, or for example, if you've got employees who are maybe kind of sign the contracts every so often. So if you sign with them the new contract, well, I'm not 100% sure, but then you might probably be sort of able to check, okay, before we sign the new contract, can I check if you actually have a right to work here? But for all the retrospective checks or all the existing employees, then you don't need to do this. And I think that's quite positive, because thinking about, you know, a huge companies that will have to do all of a sudden check for thousands of people, that will be quite difficult. But that applies mostly to the new employees who apply for work. And then as previously, if you have EU citizen, and then you'll have to ask him for any form of ID, and then, you know, just do the scan, for example, of his passport, you know, European passport, saying, okay, he's got right to work. So now you'll have to, okay, if you're an EU citizen, then I'll need to ask you for proof of your settled or pre-settled status.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Any last questions for Pal before we close?
Just one quick one, please.
Sure.
My son's girlfriend's Bulgarian. She's telling me she has settled status unlimited, which she applied for last year and succeeded in getting. So does she does not have to apply for this scheme now? Is that correct?
No, if she got settled status, then, you know, she applied before the deadline, and if she got status, that's all fine. So now we'll have only people who got pre-settled status. So pre-settled status is a temporary one.
Okay.
Has been given for just for 5 years. So then people can stay here, gather the 5 continuous years of residence, and then they can reapply for settled status, which is then, so the settled status is actually a kind of one of the types of indefinite leave to remain, so kind of permission to stay in the country permanently. So if she's got settled status, then she's covered here, unless she will leave the UK for more than 5 years, then she can lose that status. But otherwise, she can stay here indefinitely. And then people with pre-settled status can leave up to 2 years without losing the pre-settled status.
Yeah, she said she's got it for a daughter as well, and it's unlimited. So
yeah,
so
normally the child gets the same status as a parent if it's linked to the parent application. So both of them can stay here indefinitely, and it's all
okay.
fine.
Thank you for clarifying that.
No problem.
Thanks,
I would just before we close, I want to ask one quick question, and it's really in terms of you were good to clarify there that employers don't need to retrospectively check if their employees have applied to the scheme, but what can employers do to support or encourage their current employees to apply to the scheme? We've seen some good practice where employers have raised awareness of the need to apply. Also some practical measures, allowing access to photocopiers or scanners, providing pay slips or contracts, perhaps even allowing some time off to go to appointments. Is there anything else that you think employers should be doing at this time, or is it just an awareness raising issue now?
Most of it, so the main thing now is raising an awareness, and then reminding everyone if they haven't applied yet, and then that's great what you're saying, that, you know, just giving a time off just to go maybe and meet the advisors like ourselves. We normally try to travel around Scotland and then having the sort of EUSS clinics in different cities so that people live closer to advisor, but, you know, and we try to do it within the weekends, so, you know, it's more flexible for people. But nowadays, even, you know, just in midweek, the people can just come here. Very often now we are dealing with people with no valid ID documents, which still is possible to apply, but it is a bit more difficult. So we need to do a paper application forms, but, you know, if they can travel maybe to the consulate at some time, you know, just kind of do last minute emergency appointments just to get the passport, and then in certain circumstances, like I know the Polish consulate can issue the temporary passport, sometimes even on the day of the appointment, which then allows us to you know, put the application through based on that temporary passport. And then once they got the biometric in a couple of months' time or weeks' time, then that's fine, they can update it. Stuff like that. What I can do also, I'll send that to you as well, so you can share that with the rest of the people. But I'm going to copy a link to the chat. So that's our Padlet. So that's a link to all our digital resources. And then please feel free to share that resources then in different languages. Please feel free to share that link as well. So all documents that resources that are free to download and share. So hopefully that might be quite useful. And then with the time after we survive the 30th of June, which now we've got plenty of appointments and trying to help people to apply, we'll be then doing a big campaigns for reminding people how to prove the status, how to update the details, and then what to do later. And then we'll be happy to, once we survive the 30th, I mean, everything now is like after 30th, but yeah, if after 30th, you would think that you know, your company or your sort of network or your local community would benefit for kind of information session like the one today. We are happy to deliver that. You know, anytime we can agree, and it's all free. So we are funded by the Scottish government. So we can then arrange the events like this, and then just provide some more information as well. People can contact us either through the email address or through our social media, and they can write in their own language. So we've got a network of volunteers from different nationalities speaking different languages, so we can always try to then deal with some queries in you know, their own languages, which is always very helpful, especially for vulnerable people. They might sometimes have kind of language barrier. So we're open for cooperation after 30th.
Well, thank you so much for your time today. I know you've got another meeting to go to, so I think that's coming on for 11:10, so I'm going to draw the session to a close there. I will circulate the slides, Pal's contact details, and the link that he put in the chat, and we will edit a recording of this video and make that available as well. So that should be arriving in your inbox later today. If you have any questions from an employment perspective about how to approach workers or how to discuss this with your workers, please do speak to Foreign Eye, for a Scottish Building Federation member. We'd be more than happy to help you with that. And really, I think the deadline is a week tomorrow, so it's one big last push before the deadline, and hopefully we can get as many EU citizens who are currently here working in construction to stay and remain and work and live in Scotland. So thank you again, Pal, for your time. Thank you to everybody who attended. Really do appreciate you taking some time out, and watch out in your inboxes later. You'll get that information across to you. Thank you very much, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.